can remember the first time my mother brought me to the State University of Iowa hospitals. As we were walking toward the entrance, I accidentally dropped my glove, and after picking it up, I noticed how blurred the hospital entrance looked. When I stepped off the curb and walked toward the entrance, the building looked fuzzy, and objects appeared blurred even though we drew closer to the door. Once inside the hospital, Mother and I went to the eye department where we were introduced to the doctor. After a short discussion with the doctor, he helped me into the examining chair and looked into my eyes with a small light. He looked awful fuzzy, and it was real hard to see his features. Then the doctor took me across the room and helped me find the chin rest of a complicated instrument with which he said he was going to test my eyes.
One of the essential parts in the examination of the eye is the use of the slit lamp microscope. As you can see, there is a scar over the pupil and a cone that extends outward. This type of lesion is most prominent in girls of this age who have a cone-shaped cornea. I told Mary Jane she would be helped a great deal by a corneal transplantation, but it would be necessary to wait until the eye was donated to the eye bank before we could do the surgery. Unknown to Mary Jane, a man with an incurable disease was at this time lying ill in another part of the hospital. His wife, while reading the newspaper aloud to her husband, noticed an article about the Iowa Lions Eye Bank. Immediately, her husband became interested in the subject and asked her to contact the eye bank since it was located in the same hospital. Then the patient's wife went down the hall where she met Miss Ruth Fisher, the eye bank secretary, and gave her the newspaper article. She explained her husband's wishes, and Miss Fisher immediately recognized this individual as the type needed to donate eyes to be used for corneal transplantations. This is the registration card to be signed by a person desiring to donate his eyes to the eye bank. The back of the card must be notarized to assure that the donor's signature is authentic. Here is the identification card that is carried by the donor at all times. Then Miss Fisher showed the results of a corneal transplantation of her right eye. As you can see, she still has a very fine scar at the periphery of the cornea, but her vision is normal with glasses. Then Miss Fisher said she would be glad to take the donor cards to the patient's room. Upon arriving at the room, they found the patient agreeable to donating his eyes to the eye bank. After the patient signs the donor card, Miss Fisher, who is a notary public, signs the back of the card and places the seal, signifying that the patient's signature is authentic. One card is kept with the patient's relative, the other in the eye bank file, and the third is carried by the donor. Soon after the patient signed the donor card, he was discharged and sent home from the hospital.
11 days after my visit to the doctor, he called to say that an eye was available for my operation.
The Iowa Highway Patrol plays an important role by rushing the eyes to the State University of Iowa hospitals. In this case, the patient returned home where he died. His local physician removed the eyes and called the county sheriff, who got in touch with the Highway Patrol. The Highway Patrolman delivered the eyes in an ice-cooled container directly to the eye department in the university hospitals. The patient was admitted to the hospital and prepared for surgery. This operation is performed under local anesthesia, and therefore it is necessary to give the patient drugs to quiet her. Some 30 minutes later, after the drugs have taken effect, the patient is helped onto a cart to be taken to the operating room. A nurse moves the patient through the hall and then escorts her to the operating suite, where final preparations are made for surgery. The operation is performed with sterile technique, and the new corneal button is placed into the cornea. Then the new button is sutured in place. While the surgical procedure is in progress, the nurse is busy preparing the patient's bed. Boards are placed under the mattress to make the bed as flat as possible, and an air mattress is placed on the bed. This mattress consists of many tubes which are alternately filled with air, and in this way change the position of the patient. This prevents discomfort from lying still over a long period of time. Air is forced and released through the different tubes by this air compressor. After the operation, the patient is wheeled through the halls to her room. Here, she is carefully transferred from the cart to her bed. Several attendants help in this maneuver to keep the patient's movements at a minimum. It is necessary for the patient to remain flat in bed for approximately 5 days in order for the eye to reform. Each morning I removed the bandage and put drops into the patient's eyes. Mary Jane remarked that her vision was still somewhat fuzzy. I explained that poor vision at this time is due to material on the surface of the cornea and the stitches over the eye. Edema of the cornea shortly after the new cornea had been placed on the recipient eye also causes poor vision. Throughout the post-operative care, dressings are changed every day and drops are put in the eye to either dilate the pupil or to keep the pupil smaller to prevent complications from occurring after the operation.
Several weeks after my recovery, I returned to the doctor's office to be fitted for glasses. Although I could see much better than before surgery, the doctor said my sight would be much improved with lenses. My vision was not distorted as it was before the operation, and when I looked at the chart, I was able to see the large letters. Then the doctor placed lenses in front of my eyes, which improved my vision considerably, and I could almost read down to the normal range on the chart. It was wonderful to see again.
Refinements of the refraction are done. The refinements will be the final prescription that she will receive.
I remember the first time I left the hospital wearing my new glasses. Once outside, I took a few steps before realizing how sharp and crisp the buildings and trees looked. It was then I noticed the contrast between my vision of today with that of my first visit to the hospital a few weeks earlier. Speaking for myself and others who have been given a renewed chance of a normal life, I wish to thank the doctors, the Iowa Lions Eye Bank, and the donors who gave their eyes so others may see.